What's up, guys? I'm BTC. It would come as no surprise to anyone playing Overwatch lately that Blizzard has been making quite a few mistakes recently. And as it turns out, they're about to pay for some of those mistakes. And it's going to come from an unlikely source. But boy, they are going to pay indeed, to the tune of probably hundreds of millions of dollars. And I won't be shedding a tear. So this was a press release put out by Blizzard Activision, and it says Blizzard Entertainment and NetEase are suspending game services in China. Blizzard Entertainment announced today that it will be suspending most Blizzard game services in mainland China due to the expiration of the current licensing agreements with NetEase on January 23rd, 2023. This includes World of Warcraft, Hearthstone, Warcraft 3, Reforged. Is anyone still playing that? Overwatch, StarCraft, Diablo, blah, 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 blah. Anyways, pretty much everything that Blizzard puts out is no longer going to be allowed in China. It is completely banned effective January 23rd, 2023, unless they can somehow reach some new agreement, which probably won't happen in time. It continues saying, Blizzard Entertainment has a licensing agreement with NetEase since 2008 covering the publication of these Blizzard titles in China. The two parties have not yet reached a deal to renew the agreements that is consistent with, get this, the two parties have not yet reached an agreement that is consistent with Blizzard's operating principles and commitments to players and employees. Let me read that one more time. They have not reached an agreement that is consistent with Blizzard's operating principles and commitments to players and employees. What principles would those be? What principles would those be? Because, I don't think you have any. I don't think you have any. The agreements are set to expire January 23rd, January 2023. We will suspend new sales in the coming days, and Chinese players will be receiving details of how this will work soon. Upcoming releases for World of Warcraft, blah-blah-blah-blah-blah, and Season 2 of Overwatch will proceed later this year. We're immensely grateful for the passion our Chinese community has shown throughout the nearly 20 years we've been bringing our games to China through NetEase and other partners, said Mike Ybarra, the president, Blizzard Entertainment. Their enthusiasm and creativity inspired us, and we are looking for alternatives to bring our games back to the players in the future. What this means is come January 2023, all Blizzard games are effectively banned in China. And I think this is hilarious because they are going to lose an absolute truckload of money not being able to operate their games in China. And it just makes the fact that they were squeezing people for $19 for a garbage skin for Junker Queen and they're ripping off people for these stupid bundles and stuff. I think it is hilarious that Blizzard is going to lose a massive amount, truckloads worth of money, because they're not going to be allowed to operate in China anymore. Now, for those that don't fully understand this situation, allow me to give a very brief explanation. In most parts of the world, a game company can make a game, put up the servers, and then players just connect, and you're good. However, China doesn't work like that. In China, you specifically need to get the government's approval. There's usually more than one section that you need to get approval from. Also, any company that is operating from another country needs to get kind of permission and needs to join up with another company that exists in China. It needs to be partnered with a Chinese-owned company. That is why Blizzard needed to enter into that agreement with NetEase. They needed to have that Chinese partner in order to operate there. And now they're losing it, so they can't operate there. So unless Blizzard convinces NetEase to renew the agreement or they find a new partner, then they're simply not going to be able to run any of their games in China, and they're going to lose potentially hundreds of millions of dollars by just not being able to put their games in there, especially with the whole microtransaction heavy Overwatch 2, Diablo Immortal. Like, a bunch of these games that Blizzard is putting out now are all very heavy with the microtransactions, and they rely on China for a lot of that, and they're just not going to be able to. So they're going to be in a lot of trouble with that. Now, you might think, well, hey, there's got to be a whole bunch of companies that'll be willing to partner up with Blizzard, except that's not the case. There's really only two big ones. You have NetEase and Tencent. There are a bunch of smaller companies, but they probably don't have the infrastructure needed to actually handle all of Blizzard's games and this and that and blah, blah, blah. So they're pretty much just left with either renewing with NetEase or getting Tencent to agree to something. But here's the thing. China itself has been cracking down on a lot of games, and they've actually been talking about just outright banning a whole bunch of very popular games. I think Fortnite was on the list as well, as plus League of Legends and maybe some other ones and stuff like that. But they've been talking about just outright banning these games. Now, Blizzard doesn't have any problem just doing whatever they need to in order to appease the Chinese censors in order to get their games. They've been doing that for years and years and years. They had to change content in World of Warcraft a long time ago. They've removed content. And, there's a reason why certain character traits of Tracer and Soldier 76 are simply not there in the Chinese version of the game. And it's like, that's weird. Like, all references to certain character traits just aren't in the Chinese version of the game. And it's goes to show what Blizzard will be willing to do. And Disney does the same thing with all of their movies, right? They'll put in some stuff to a bunch of woke stuff in order to pander to some people on social media and whatever. And then, of course, as soon as it gets over to China, they're like, oh, no, we'll just delete those scenes. And it's the same thing that Blizzard does with their games. They'll just, they'll include it here for, the American audience. And then in China, it's like, oh, no, it's gone. It's not there. So Blizzard has no problem. And what I guess is probably going to end up being the case is that China is probably going to ask for a whole bunch of changes, and then Blizzard is either going to have to make those changes. They will, by the way. They absolutely will. Or they just won't be able to get their game in there. So what I think is probably going to happen is, because this is now going to be up in January. Now, that is a couple months away, so it seems like there might be a lot of time, but you have to realize that these kinds of negotiations take a very, very, very long time to go through, especially anything dealing with the government or the Chinese government. It's going to take a very, very long time for them to go through all the paperwork and this and that and whatever to get approval for this. So what's probably going to happen, and the fact that they're telling us now and that they're discontinuing sales, means that Blizzard definitely doesn't have any hope for this being resolved anytime soon. So when January 23rd comes around of next year, these games are just going to be shut off, and they're not going to be available in China, and they're probably not going to be available, I would say, at least 6 months or more, half a year or more. I mean, there's probably going to be a decent amount of time when all of these games are just simply not available in China. And I think it's funny, even more funny, all this situation, but they're not going to be able to have any of their Overwatch League games in China. Like, the actual Chinese teams are not going to be able to practice, like, at home. They have to go to another country in order to practice because they're not going to be allowed to play the game. And Blizzard isn't going to be able to have any sort of tournaments or anything over there, because that's one of the things that they were trying to do. They're trying to push with the Overwatch League and stuff. They were trying to increase the player base in China, and they were doing everything they could to, oh yeah, we're going to do all sorts of stuff for China and make it happy. And then now the Chinese government and whatnot, they're just, we're not going to let you play the game here anymore. So basically, yeah, they're gonna, all Blizzard games are gonna be banned in China starting next January. I would expect at least maybe 4 to 5 months worth of downtime before they can get a new agreement up, and they are going to lose a massive amount of money. And given the really scammy, scummy nature of the microtransactions in Overwatch 2, I can't help but laugh.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit, I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit, I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. Everything I do so instinctive and